you that are playing from home, good morning and welcome to you as well. So guys, you'll see that there's a really weird looking camera up here. We've got quite a few people around Australia that are logged in today. So it's just a big, if you can rate, put your hands together for them for joining us from home, obviously in Queensland. And we're also joined by our West Australia State Manager as well, Mark Windram. So Mark's hanging out over in Perth with his team over there. So it is a warm welcome to everybody, and it is great to see you all face to face again, thanks to COVID. Today we're here, obviously, to celebrate International Women's Day and what it means to all of us. This year, the Council for International Women's Day has chosen Choose to Change as a theme. So what does that mean to you? Choose to change. But to me, it's about challenging myself to be a better human. There's no gender involved in it. It isn't about challenging men or making a standpoint that women should be treated differently. It's about equality and challenging ourselves. In life, we face so many challenges, whether they be personal, professional, or other, and we make choices in how we handle them. As women, there are so many things that we can choose to challenge together for better outcomes. So today, guys, what I want to do, apart from the picture that's up there, and I'll get to that in a minute, is just remind everybody, if you can pop your phones on silent. I know it's Monday, and I know that people that had settlements that fell over on Friday are probably anxious for their phones to go off today. Feel free to turn them on silent. If you do need to take a call, head out the back for us, out onto the back deck, preferably not into the river because I don't have floaties. The toilet locations are out the door. There is a sign. Obviously, ladies, go to ladies, men, go to men. And there is no sort of here. The emergency exits is the Brisbane River. Good luck, there's bull sharks. Guys, I just want to say thank you to our sponsors today. So up the back, you'll see a wonderful team of people that have supported International Women's Day. For 3 of them that are up there, it's their 2nd year with us now. It is important to obviously have sponsors at these events and supporting us through the journeys that the FBAA takes. So thank you very much to our sponsors. Technology, one hand of the microphone doesn't work, let me tell you. So guys, there's a picture up on the screen. I'll get Mariah to go back to it now. This is something that came up on Facebook last week, and I chose to share it on my profile, but it's mainly for the men that join us in the room today as well. And it's got a little saying that goes with it, and bear with me while I read it because I don't have glasses on today, so this could end up very pear-shaped. So the last thing I wanted to do was jump in the damn pool with my clothes on. I didn't care about the pictures or the photo opportunity. This is real talk. I couldn't have cared less about the pool jump, but she did. She wanted it. My wife had been married before and never had really had a proper wedding. It was a down at the courthouse kind of thing. But this time she had a dream. She wanted the gown, the flowers, the location, the cake, and the photographers. She wanted the fairy tale when in reality, I would have been fine just down at the courthouse. So I jumped in the pool. Not because she made me and not because she would have been mad or held it over me, because she's not like that. I did it because it was important to her. And I've learned over the years that I have had things that have been so important to me and she'd never given a damn about them, but I wanted her there and involved. So I jumped into the pool. Because I love her and I love her dreams and her desires, I jumped in the pool not for the photo, I jumped in the pool for her. Her dreams may not be my dreams, but I wanted my queen to know that her dreams were important to me. Her desires I care about, so I jumped in the pool. So fellas, jump in the pool. Don't be an ass, don't be a stick in the mud. This isn't a flex, this isn't a push down or roll your eyes at what her dreams are. It isn't tough to mock her or call her your old lady. Can someone send that memo to my other half? It isn't a flex to keep her down, it's a flex to push her out to fly. It's king shit to empower the women to live their own lives. This is your queen. I'm not going to read the word in the middle because Peter will slap me even though he's not here. You want her to treat you like a king. You want her by your side when your shit's down and your life's going through hell. Then stand by her. Do the silly shit. Take the photos. Dance in the middle of the restaurant. I want her to dream. I want her to know that I may not have the same dreams, but I support her and I'll take whatever picture she wants. So I jumped in the pool. And it's so important, guys, that you jump in the pool. Again, not the Brisbane River, in a pool. So that's just a little bit to remind the guys today that we're not standing here in front of you for International Women's Day to say, hey, let's burn the bra. We're not stepping up to go, women should be in places as CEOs and that women should be up there. It's great if we make it, but we need your support to get there as well. And it's about celebrating it together because together we will achieve great things. It's not about singling us out from you. It's not about women need to be up here, women need to earn more money. Support each other to get to where we want to go to together. So, all of that aside, members. I've got the membership reminder that's sitting here in a bullet point. If you refer anybody else, and if there's anybody in the room today that's not already an FBAA member, shame on you. No, seriously. If you're an FBAA member, you're on the wrong team. But guys, if you do come over and join us and you get an FBAA member to refer you in, the FBAA member will receive 10% off their membership every time they renew somebody or get somebody else to join us. You all have an agenda on your seats. I sat on mine earlier. So guys, I'll run through the agenda very quickly. Actually, I can look up here and I can look at the people at home when I do it. So we've gone passionate about choosing to challenge. Now, Mariah has reminded me this morning, and I'm going to throw Mariah in on this because I had a bit of a giggle with her. You all grabbed a passion fruit mojito when you came in, and there was a little bit of significance behind it because you had the passion in the passion fruit, and it makes us passionate about today. So there's a bit of a twist on that one, a little bit weak if you ask me. So we've done the opening remarks by Peter White. Now, clearly you've all worked it out. I'm not Peter White. I will say, and I'm probably tempting fate when I say this, that Pete's logged in from home, so he can hear and see everything I do today, and performance reviews are in June. When you get through it, I'll give you his email, and just remember that the better the email sent to him, the better the payment I get. So moving on from that one, I'm going to skip through a few things. There's a Polaroid camera station over to my right. I was going to say my left, and it was just totally one thing going on there. I've had one coffee, bear with me. Polaroid station's over on the right. The objective today, guys, is please make sure you do have your photos taken in front of it. I'm quite happy to stand in on anybody's photos. Just ask me. I love a good picture. But also feel free to pop them up onto the little pegs that are up on that wall. We're running, pretty well. There's some space left up there. They will go into a prize. So the best photo that's up on the wall today, I've asked the lovely Joanna to pick our winner, and there will only be one winner, so the competition is fierce. But also, guys, if you do want to post a photo up onto social media today, please use the hashtag FBWA. Wow, shit. Mark, that was here. Yeah, we just changed it for Perth. Mark's now sitting there clapping his hands going, the whole FBAA's just moved to Perth. But the FBAA IWD 2021 is one hashtag, and the second hashtag is hashtag choose to challenge. It's also noted on the signs around the venue with the QR codes. If you want my details, there's no QR codes here, and I probably won't give them out. So guys, today we're proud to announce that we have raised $1,518 towards the Lady Musgrave charity. And for those of you that don't know the Lady Musgrave charity, it's Queensland's oldest charity, established in 1885, and is a champion for homeless women. The Trust provides life-saving services to vulnerable women and their children when they are facing critical homeless situations as a result of domestic violence, family breakdown, poor health, or other complex issues. So if you wish to donate any more money towards the charity today, there are QR codes that was at the main door when you came in, and there's also some others around the venue. Feel free to link to that QR code, and an email will also be sent with the QR code on it after today's events. Now I've got to do the part that I hate. So guys, with the COVID pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, we all need to take precautions when we're attending the FBAA events face-to-face. So please ensure that you wash your hands regularly. You'd be surprised. Please ensure that you use the utensils that are at the grazing station. They're the ones that look like little tongs. You pick your food up with those. Again, you'd be surprised. If you do feel the slightest bit unwell, why the hell did you turn up? However, please ensure that you go home and rest up. Nobody likes a cranky breaker. And also notify one of the FBAA events organisers, clearly not me. They're the two that are walking. No, they're not walking at the moment. They're somewhere in the room. They've got blue shirts on. One's coming to this door, which is Mariah, and the other one is Miss May, who is probably up at our back door at the moment. So look for the blue shirts and notify them if you feel sick. Don't come to me. I probably don't care. The main symptoms outlined by the Australian Government Health are fever, flu-like symptoms, coughing, sore throat, fatigue, and shortness of breath. Peter White has all of those, which is why he's not here today. He's having a COVID swab. I will share a little bit with you guys now. I did There's no messages coming through yet, so I'm safe. I did have a good giggle with him earlier. He has gone for a COVID test as we speak. So they are in the process of sticking the cotton swab up into his brain at that again. He also did say to me they're probably not going to find a brain, but I did. So the FBAA also has a special committee for COVID who are monitoring the Australian Health Department for any changes within the virus and continuing to take the appropriate level of care. Please ensure for the grazing platters that you have sanitised your hands first. There are sanitising stations either side of the grazing platter. And that you do, again, use the utensils to serve yourself onto a napkin or plate. Please don't feed anybody else. My notes go, introduce Peter slowly. Next. So, I now get the pleasure, and I actually think this is way cooler because I get to introduce Jonah James today, who is going to be our keynote speaker. Jonah's joining us from Mortgage Easy. Now I actually have to read this because I didn't practice this one because I wasn't doing it until about 3 hours ago. Joanna's career began as a registered architect and builder. However, life took a 180-degree turn more than 18 years ago when she decided to bring her unique talents into the mortgage management arena. Working across all facets of Mortgage Easy, she was one of the founding directors when the company changed its focus to lending in 2000. Seen as a breath of fresh air, her creative abilities have held her in good stead of areas of innovation, design and technology. She actively sets out to create an environment where creativity and logic go hand in hand, empowering diverse teams and mentoring future managers. Joanna's contribution to the finance industry was recognised this year in the Women in Finance Awards, where she was awarded the Principal of the Year. So Joanna, I'll get you to join me up here.
Are we on? Now we're on. Perfect. So, welcome. Happy International Women's Day. And I can think of no better day than to talk to all of you about why women can have it all. So, a few more things about me. In addition to my responsibilities of General Manager at Mortgage Easy, I'm also the Chief Ambassador at The Successful Woman and the author of my new book, Mind, Body, Spaces, which comes out in a few weeks. Before we can ask the question, why women can have it all, we must ask ourselves, can women have it all? So I decided to go on a journey to understand the etymology of where does this term, we can have it all, come from. According to Ruth Rosen, who is a feminist writer, the term first arose in the late 1970s. At that time, it was not a feminist cry. It actually was a very clever marketing pitch for the liberated consumers who were wearing heels. Fast forward to the 1980s, and Joyce Gabriel and Beth Baldwin released this book, Having It All, a practical guide to overcoming the career woman's blues. It was the first time there was a book with practical tips for all of us working mothers on what we needed to do to help maximise our scarce time. But something significant happened a few years later that would cause a seismic shift in the way in which women approach this idea of working. Helen Gurley Brown, the then editor of the Cosmopolitan magazine, who had been giving her workplace confessionals and sex tips for over 20 years, released The Ultimate Woman's Guide to Love, Success, Sex, and Money, even if you're starting with nothing. Now, Helen saw herself as a mouse burger, an unassuming woman who had risen her way to the top. And she believed that this book was a possibility to reach other women who might be ready for more and were willing to work for it. More money, more security, more love, and inevitably, more sex. However, Helen did not choose the title of this book. In fact, she despised it. She was overruled by her editor. She had wanted the book to be called The Mouseburger Plan. No wonders why the editor chose Having It All. So, for the next 30 years, Having It All inspired many generations of women to become trailblazers, to move into the universities, businesses, companies, the boardrooms. And thank goodness the editor made the choice that they did, for this is where we stand today. And I'm sure we are all grateful for this book. And yet something curious happened over the next 30 years. Having it all became synonymous with doing it all. Now, can I get a show of hands of all the women in the room who at any point have felt overwhelmed, stressed, or exhausted with having to do it all, having to be the amazing women that we are with all of the things that we do for all of the people that we care for, whether that be at home or at work every day. In fact, I had a sobering moment when I realised that over 30 years of my own working history and having raised 4 children, I have had 4 months off when I was not officially at work. Does this look familiar to anyone? As women, we're expected to multitask like an octopus, juggling many, many things. So, fast forward to 2012, and another incredible woman took the stage. A woman by the name of Anne Marie Slaughter, who was the then first Director of Policy Planning in the US government. And in July 2012, she released an article entitled, "Why Women Still Cannot Have It All." She gave an honest and raw account of the difficulties she found holding a high-paced, high-pressure public office and her growing concerns for her teenage sons that were back home in New Jersey. 4 a.m. starts, long commutes, meetings late into the night, weekends trying to juggle everything that would ordinarily be done during the week. And when she finally gave her reason for leaving office, she cited family reasons. She had come to the conclusion that juggling her busy work life and her family needs was impossible. This article went viral and began conversations about why we cannot have it all. Curiously, it became synonymous, unofficially, that a woman who would leave her career citing family potentially had been let go, or even couldn't cop it. How anyone could believe that of Anne Marie, I have no idea, because upon her return to Princeton, she held down a full-time legal position in the Department of Law. She did 40 to 50 speeches a year while juggling a family and shortly upon her return, releasing yet another book. So here we are today, 2021. And what does this mean? In the 80s, we're told we can have it all and we get lots of sex. In 2012, we're told we cannot have it all. And in fact, how dare we even try? In 2021, we as women sit on the edge of a great divide. And we must ask ourselves one simple question. Do we believe that we can have it all, or do we not? Now, I decided to unpack this journey, and I came to realize that before we can answer this question, there is something missing, something that's been missing from our thought processes that perhaps we should consider first. And what would that preceding step be? Knowing that as we sit on this great divide, the choices that we make today will lay the foundations for future women who will surpass us in the same way that the incredible women who walked before us did the same for us. The first question I realised is we must be able to answer this. What do you want? A seemingly simple question, and yet so many of us are unclear on what we want. We do what we believe is the right thing to do, what our partner would want, our parents, our family, or perhaps it's even the conformity of social media and society telling us what it is that we should want. And then we get to the elephant in the room. Do we believe that we deserve to have what we want? But having what you want doesn't necessarily mean that we can have it all. So perhaps there's something else that we need to consider. Why do you want what you want? What is it that lights your fire? What is your passion? What is your purpose? What keeps you up late at night when you're simply inspired or you have stuff that needs to get done? Understanding your why is a quintessential thing for any woman to know. And yet understanding your why around what you want still doesn't mean that we can have it all. Who are you? Are we our bodies? Are we our education? Our job title? The name on the door? Our race? Our religion? Who are you that is deciding why you want what you want? And on the path to understanding who you are, inevitably you realise that life has three truths. We come into this world connected to all things, and yet we come in alone. We leave this world connected to all things, and yet we leave this world alone. And in the middle, there will never be, either in the past, the present, or the future, any woman quite like you will be. Your unique experience in life, your perspective on what that means, your skills, your talents, your gifts, your struggles, your strengths, and your pain. And so perhaps when we know who we are, who we genuinely are, things change when we look for the all that we are seeking to have. When we move away from looking for external validation of what the all will be, something magical happens, I believe, for every woman. When we create in our life from knowing all of who we are, we can have it all, for we are making choices being all of who we are. And by this, I mean the whole of, which is in fact the meaning of the word all, being the whole of. It's from this place that we can create as being our authentic selves. And by this, I mean the good, the ugly, and everything in between. There is no research at all that places limits on our potential. And as we sit on the edge of the great divide, we have some things to consider. It is from this place of knowing that we as women can have anything. And yet, having it all doesn't mean that we will have everything. And having it all doesn't mean that we must do everything. Having it all is what each and every one of us decides that all to be. So whilst we must speak up as women about the other women in the world who currently still have many limitations placed on their potential, the greatest limitations, the most devastating ones, are the ones we place on ourselves. So it's time to stand on the edge of a great canyon as we question whether we can have it all. Perhaps we should be asking, whose all are we actually referring to? The universal truths that guide our potential do not discriminate by age, by religion, by nationality. They are universal. They certainly do not discriminate by gender either. So every woman today on International Women's Day, under the theme of Choose to Challenge, I challenge whether having it all is in fact choosing to be all of you. And as I imagine standing on the edge of a great divide, I can feel Helen Gurley Brown and Anne-Marie Slaughter by my side, encouraging women to make the choice of what is your all and what does the bridge ahead look like for you. Why women can have it all? I would challenge that perhaps we rewrite this to say why women must have it all and choose to challenge what our all will be. Happy International Women's Day. May you celebrate being all of who you are.
Chris, has anybody got any questions for Joanna? Again, one coffee and I'm still not functioning properly. So are there any questions at all from that? No? Okay. So I do. It's when you get a pretty pink pen out and you write notes. But taking away from it. There was a woman holding a baby though. I'm just going to bring up the fact that if it was me, I'd be holding a cat.
Absolutely.
There's a baby, yeah. And it's okay. Look, the one thing I've also, Joe, learned to accept is that there's most of the women photos you see when you get to this age is women holding children. And I've got to this age, and I'm not going to define what that age is, but I've got to this age and I've accepted within myself through some challenges as well that I probably won't ever have children. And that's okay too. It's a challenge to society that women don't always have to have kids. You don't always have to have a husband and the 4-seater car and the 2.5 children. The challenge is whatever you want your life to be as well. So, you know, there's the opportunities, like we said before, of fostering and adopting and all of that. And that may not be the journey for every woman that's out there. And the society that we're in today is not going to dictate that women need to get married and go and have children. And that in itself has been a challenge along the way as well. So I've taken that from it again, women holding cat next time.
Absolutely. And in fact, Helen Brown wrote the book not for women with children in mind. She just wrote that book for women.
With cats.
With cats. And some puppies too.
Okay, and on the point of sex.
I knew you'd get that one.
Yeah. I just want to say, from somebody that travels the way that I do with work and commits to the FBAA pay reviews in June, who the hell's got time for sex these days? Just throwing it out there now. By the time I get home, the best thing I look forward to is a really long hot bath and my bed and my cat. And again, Joanna, I'm going to ask you the question. What is it that you want? Because you've led, obviously, Mortgage Easy to where it is now. I was going to say Measy then, but we'll call it by its whole name. You've led the masses, and I know that as one female, I do and have for many years now looked up to you. But what is it that you actually want in life?
So what I want is to be able to create what I want. That is what I want.
Well put.
And a part of that, as I transition, is also being able to help women find what it is they want and to be able to empower them to do that. But I love doing lots of things. I love being in the office, leading an amazing team, setting goals, growing a business, and being in the finance world. And I love my architectural design and understanding spaces and how they affect our mindset and the way in which we live and how we can understand what's happening from us by looking from the outside in. And I realised that it was about time for me to get up and stand up, broken foot and all.
Dead dog.
Absolutely, my naughty puppy, to have opportunities to speak to all of you today. That is what I want. So thank you for providing that to me.
And the other thing I'm going to add to it, you also said earlier that there will never be another you, and I think Whitey's probably sitting at home going, thank God. Just saying on that one. So guys, I'll get you to put your hands together again for Joanna. There was another question that Joe asked, which was, who are you? And in 2020, I'm going to add to that without crying today. I also lost a part of who I was in 2020. For some people in the room, you'll understand my journey started in April and I was diagnosed with breast cancer last year. I can do this. And it was a hard battle, a fair battle because it was during COVID. And the first few months, I let it change who I was. And it took what I believed was a part of me away from who I was as well. But my challenge to all of that was I couldn't let breast cancer define who I was, and it wasn't going to. Most of you, and there's been some comments from people in the past, have gone, gee, you don't look like you've got cancer. It's my favourite sentence, let me tell you. I opted not to have chemotherapy or radiation, even though it was under the direction of my doctors to go down the path of doing it. I stand in front of you today, though, I feel pretty healthy. I won't know for another 2 months if I'm healthy or not. But I had to challenge the situation of where we were at. And to lose a part of yourself throughout the journey, I've gone through some cosmetic changes. I'm pretty sure you can all draw the picture as to what the cosmetic changes were. But the lesson in life that it taught me is we as women stand as sisters. And the support from women and men through the journey of my own breast cancer took me to where I'm at today. And I set challenges for myself along the way, and part of that was reaching my KPIs. Again, performance reviews are to June. But I set my KPIs for me, and most people think it's stupid that you kind of go, Leo, you need to take the time to be sick. But the problem of having cancer is you're not really sick. There's a part of you that has decided to go down a path and do stuff. But in yourself, you don't feel like you deserve to be in a hospital bed because you're not sick. You don't get up every day and feel like you need to be sick or vomit or have a headache or anything like that. The challenge for me was to keep life going on the normal path and to be as normal as I could be. And that was setting my KPIs and wanting to exceed them every month. And it sounds really strange because most people go, hey, take some time off work because you've got cancer. And I couldn't. I had to keep going. There's photos which I'm not going to put up today because it's kind of funny. But I was working in my hospital room and I had my laptop and my tablet and I was still making calls, and some of the people in here actually got calls from me when I was in hospital. So the challenge that I had and the choice that I made was to keep going down the path that I was on. And at 41, I never thought that life would hand me this. And I don't think any women would think that life would hand you this at any age. There was a 23-year-old in hospital when I was in there having a double mastectomy because of breast cancer. Last week, we had 8 women join our group under the age of 35. So the reality is that it's out there. So my challenge to everybody in the room is please go and get yourselves checked up, at least from the neck up. because it is so important that while we're going through all of this saying we want to be the best people that we can be, that medically, even if you feel well, just get a checkup. Just go and have your normal checks done, because that's the side of me that would challenge everybody out there, that we sometimes put our health last because we're too busy putting everything else first, whether it's kids, husbands, work, school sports, schools, you know, general sports, and even just living, we forget. So make sure that you do jump up and try and do it. So guys, the sadness aside, because let's face it, I'm not going to suck the life out of life today. We're going to move into a very short, quick 10-minute break so you can stretch your legs, and I'm going to get off my feet, but don't forget to drop into our sponsor stands, check your phones. And as a quick reminder, with the grazing stations, use the sanitizer and the tools that are there.
Some of it. You are.
Here I am for another 6 weeks. And I am as a PG.
Right,
It's over to you.
I'll do my daughter's favourite. All right. Twinkle, twinkle. I wonder what you are. Up above the diamond in the sky. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. How I wonder what you are.
Adam's never going to be late again. Just saying. Just remember, guys, it could be you next. And I stick to what I'm saying. So, guys, I'm now going to introduce you on another note of not singing nursery rhymes. By the way, thank you for sanitising and using the tools at the grazing bar. I'm going to, do I need to say the whole surname, or can we'll just go with Nadine today? Yeah, let's just go with Nadine. Nadine is joining us from Outsourced Specialist Affordable Staff. Nadine is a dynamic woman with over 15 years of building businesses with a focus on efficiency and sustainability. In collaboration with her partners, Nadine has built affordable staff from the ground up, further sharpening her skills in business management, delegation, and efficiency strategy while continuing to scale the business up. She would describe herself as a fierce and strong woman with a belief that loving your work, loyalty, and collaboration are absolute must-haves for successful bossing life, boss babes in heels, and achieving a work-life harmony. Nadine's view on loving your work is aptly quoted by Albert Schweitzer. Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you are doing, you will be successful. So Nadine, it's over to you.
So I just wanted to let everyone know this is my first time presenting live anywhere. So I'm so grateful that it's for this room that I'm doing that. So I wanted to start off by just telling you a little bit about the concept of delegating down from the bottom up. And briefly, that will outline executive versus administrative functions and how these apply to your workflows. My click is not working.
No. Don't click me, I don't disappear. It died. This is the technical part where I go, sorry guys. Oh, there we go. Hey, I got it to work.
Yes, no, thank you, that's what I needed. So which button? Okay, I'll say slide. And you do it. All right, so it's a simple fact. Women take on a lot of responsibility. Most often we are the key decision maker in the household. And if we have our own business or have a responsible position, we're the key decision maker at work too. The difference is we have all of this body of responsibility and the same amount of time to deal with everything. So I'm choosing to challenge right now. Please raise your hands if you're the chief of both. Yup, there's a lot of us. Okay, so next slide. Thank you. It comes down to creating more capacity. We need to have it or create more of it in order to meet those outcomes and fit it within that time that we've allocated for ourselves. It needs to be available to us so that we can make clearer, more concise decisions and focus on the executive function of what we have to do. Next slide, thank you. And these are just some examples of what you could do with capacity, but really it's what you identify as what you need and want in your life. I've had clients who have found the capacity to take a holiday for the first time in many years with their family, or just to take the next step in scaling their business up. Next slide, please. So what are administrative and executive functions? Next slide. The executive function is the thinking through and working out and cognitive process of what has to be done to achieve an outcome. The next slide, administrative function. This is just what needs to be done for that outcome, the actioning of the thing. So to start this process, I recommend separating the executive from the administrative function. So we need to assess and then identify and review the functions that we're performing or are being performed by our key staff. And then think about which of those functions can be allocated away from you or the more expensive resource of your key staff to an admin. For example, a pricing request. So the decision to order the pricing for the client is the executive function, whereas the actual ordering is the administrative. It's pretty simple. So I wanted to go to the next slide, which is delegating down from the bottom up. So the more admin functions we or key staff handle ourselves, the less available capacity we have for the executive level decisions. Next slide. Delegating down. So the administrative functions are what you need to outsource or delegate to someone who has an administrative role within your business. This is an appropriate role for handling that type of activity. Resource-wise, it's far less expensive to delegate to an administrative person than it is to delegate that task to a person who should be generating income for your business, or to do it yourself, because you should be generating income for your business too. Next one is the first step. So bottom up, foundations first. The base admin, repetitive and time-consuming tasks are the things that we should delegate out because they don't provide us with a return for our invested time. The next step, step 2, standardize and document all of your work. You're already doing the output in training or passing on that knowledge for somebody else to do, or you're doing it yourself. So if you're mapping it and documenting it, you're saving that work from having to be done again if that person leaves. Very importantly, it gives you a redundancy and a reference point for your business process that is outside of yourself. And step 3, system review and development. So consistently review and develop your business processes. If there's changes that are required to be made, make sure that you actually implement and adapt them into your processes straight away. Because this will actually help your business process to be aligned with the current needs of your business. That is actually the whole process, very simplified. There's more information available on the slides, as you can tell, but I only have 5 minutes today. That was awesome. So I just wanted to say, it's really just an overview. It's a really big topic that you can get into to save a lot of time and create a lot of capacity within your own day. So please come and say hello to us at the back at the affordable staff stand, and I'm sure that the slides are actually going to be available as well. Thank you.
A big round of applause. Jonah, ready? Right, the first time presenting, you did pretty good. This is only my first time, can you tell? My next job in life is going to be a stand-up comedian. So I just wanted to throw something there because I did hear some murmurs happening behind me. And it's quite funny, you can always pick the parents in the room. And those that were sitting behind me saying that they were going to learn how to delegate to their children. I don't know if that's managing from the bottom up. If I had a 5-year-old running around going, "Hey, Mum, I'm delegating, do the ironing." Again, this is why I've got a cat. I haven't quite taught her how to iron, but she's good in winter as an electric fan. She's actually great security, throwing it out there, because she doesn't like anybody and she has a tendency to attack people. Other than me, I'm her human. So guys, moving right along from my shit stories about my cat. What I find really exciting also is for those that are playing from home. Thank you for the text messages that I'm getting at the moment. They are appreciated. Some of them will not be read out at today's session. Again, performance reviews are in June. So, guys, this is the exciting part of the day. The keynote speakers. I'd like to introduce you now to Julius Allen. Julius Allen is a remarkable Australian with a truly moving story. An award-winning youth advocate, she's taken on the troubled beginnings that life has dealt her to create expertise in her field of working with at-risk youth and families in crisis. Her recent TEDx Melbourne presentation on the power of acceptance was met with tumultuous applause and a standing ovation. Jules has found herself in an incredibly difficult and dangerous life situations. Making the decision not to be defined by her experiences, Jules turned her adversity into an asset. She chose to care for 32 foster children and is the proud mother of 4 adult children, a blend of her own fostered and adopted. In 2013, prompted by a dare from her kids, Jules found herself as a contestant on MasterChef in Australia. In quintessential style, she put a new profile to use by emphasising the healing power of good food in raising well-balanced children. Jules, we need to talk about good food. She has also worked professionally with young people in crisis for over 20 years. Adversity has become second nature to Jules. In the space of 2 years, since late 2015, Jules's family lost their home in the Christmas Day fires. Her mother passed away, the kids had left home, and she broke her neck in 2 places surfing in remote Indonesia. She firmly believes her greatest attribute in overcoming challenges is acceptance. Her contagious positivity and remarkable determination to make a difference is truly inspiring, and it gives me immense pleasure to welcome Julius Allen.
I need the other one. I don't need that one. They might need me, but I have this one. We could definitely need this one. Thanks so much for having me. I'd first like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Turrbal people of the New Farm area, custodians both past and present. I speak at a lot of events, and International Women's Day is always my favourite event because we talk about shit that matters. I hope. If you're all looking at your phones, I've failed miserably. I'd like to thank the men in the room for showing up. It kind of reminds, kind of payback for all the premierships I had to go to, the premiership award dinners when I was a chick back in One Turner in the 1980s. Mullets weren't cool then, they're not cool now. Someone had to say it. I remember cracking the shits with my mother in the 80s for not having me as a black person. Not everyone had the same determination as me. But I was really angry because I wanted something to fight for. I wanted something that I could jump up and down and raise my flag and be, you know, a warrior about. And she just turned around and she said, "Honey, you're a woman." And thank God I am, because every day I've got something I can fight for and something that matters to me. And see this shaking thing? It's actually a genetic thing. It's not because I'm nervous. I used to look at my old grandmother shaking and think that she was pissed all the time. She wasn't. It would have been far more exciting if she was, because she's the most boring woman in the world. I just think she's getting on the taps, and we don't. Now my dad does it too, and I'm like, nah, he's not pissed. He's just shaking. Anyway, I want to thank you all, and I wasn't going to share this, and I say that all the time because I'm one of those people who goes, I'm not going to say it, and then I say it. It's so interesting. I couldn't prepare what I was going to say for this because there's too much happening, and we can't just go through International Women's Day at this point in the current climate and not kind of acknowledge what's happening out there, because we're at a precipice of enormous change if we choose to do something about it. And when I talk about being unstoppable, I am unstoppable. And so is every woman in this room. And the reason I say that is because I don't know there's any other choice. We don't have an option right now. And right now is the moment that being unstoppable is going to work in our favour really bloody well, if we choose to actually stop talking and start doing. And on that topic, I now work as an actor full-time and a playwright. That's a whole nother story, really. But something I always wanted to do, and I heard the last speaker talk about, actually I think it was our gorgeous MC talking about doing what you're passionate about. And I'm passionate about acting, and I'm passionate about telling story, and I'm passionate about doing it through plays and screenplays, and I now have the opportunity to do that. And I'm incredibly fortunate. But I work in cop this one. I work as a full-time actor in a building leadership simulation training centre. So we train largely dudes, some girls, in working in high-end construction. So one of my characters is this chick called Jax. She's a stop-go chick. She's hardcore. She swears. She throws shit at dudes. I love her. I want to be her. I struggle to come out of character when I leave work. Supermarket. And, the language that comes out of my mouth. Finished work. Anyway, the downside of my job is my boss, and I've been there 3 years now, is insanely misogynistic. Insanely. And I've tolerated that because all my co-actors are men. And because we're actors who are employed, we're also in a luxurious position. So the common rhetoric whenever I'm putting up with what I'm putting up with is, do you know how lucky you are to work in acting? Do you know how lucky you are to have this job? Just let it go. And I've done that for 3 years. And on Friday, it was so bad because I'm trying to turn Jax into a web series, because who wouldn't want to watch Jax on any given day? And he suggested the best way to sell her was turn her into a porn star at night. It went on from there, and it went on and on and on. And I said to my other boss, we have two options at this point. You either dismiss me for the day, or whatever comes out of my mouth is going to get me sacked anyway. So I think you should go home. I went, good call. And I'm not reactionary because I've got 4 kids. And if anything dulls a reaction, it's 4 kids in a house. So I went home and I thought, I'm just going to have a scotch and I'm going to see how I feel tomorrow about this. And I woke up after 3 years of dealing with this and I thought, what am I doing? I'm speaking at International Women's Day at a time where there is a huge amount of discussion, at a time where corporations, organisations, governments cannot afford to get this wrong. And I'm sitting back and dealing with this every single day. And I've always been someone who's been absolutely adamant that what I stand up and talk about is what I live. And I could not have gotten up here today if I hadn't sent an email to the CEO of Master Builders on Saturday saying that I had a very, very delicate matter to talk about, that I wasn't willing to talk about it over email, and that we needed to meet in a private location. So I'm meeting her tomorrow at lunchtime, and I plan to throw this motherfucker under the bus. That's his fault. I never did, so and I thank this event for that. And that's what International Women's Day does to me. It reminds me of my responsibility as a woman. And it is a responsibility. And I'm going to give you a little bit of my backstory. Some of it was shared, but it's a little bit more elaborate than that. I hear about that chick that they introduced. I go, she sounds cool. She does, because I often write that brief. So I leave out a little bit. But, you know, then I come on here because I'm not going to say it and I say it. You know, I will give you a brief overview just to give myself credibility about the fact that I'm standing here. I did come from very troubled beginnings. I grew up in an incredibly rough area. If anyone knows Melbourne, One Turner in the 70s. Yeah, chick up the back's going, woo! It was mullets, Tiranas, Fabergés, footy clubs, and God help you if you're a girl. When you Reds. You know. So, and you know, sexual abuse was second nature to all of us. I remember comparing notes with my friends in the playground about what they got up to with their babysitters or their uncles or their stepfathers or their... I didn't know there was anything wrong. What I did know is that I was responsible for it. And when my stepfather came along after my parents split up, and he came along about 3 days after Dad left, so fair to say there was a bit going on in the background, he was insanely inappropriate, and my mother's response as I slapped his hands away from my breast was, "Oh, Julie, would you cut it out?" Once again, I was reminded of how responsible I was for his behaviour. Needless to say, after years of sexual abuse and an inappropriate stepfather, I went to live with my father, who was a good man but insanely absent. And I started taking drugs and drinking heavily at about the age of 12. I actually first got drunk at 9. My first drunken experience, the police were called because I smashed the neighbour's window, trying to prove to the boys that I could throw a lemon further than they could. Turns out I could. Sailing over the fence, straight into the neighbour's window. Nearly took out their 2-year-old. So the police were called. And the best thing is none of the boys dobbed me in because they didn't want to admit that I'd thrown a lemon further. Never got caught. Anyway, so 12, drinking, smoking pot, that didn't go so well. I also grew up part-time down in a surfing community. And I remember the day someone said to me, "Chicks don't surf." They do now. So I started surfing, and it's a part of the culture. I hung out with the boys. I knew what I needed to do in order to hang out with the boys, and that was one, be one of the boys and look after the boys' needs, 2 hats. So I surfed, I drank with the best of them, I smoked pot with the best of them, and that, you know, needless to say, by the time I was 17, was out of control. I was taking hip flasks to school, I was drinking before water polo training, I was drinking at school. I somehow managed to maintain fairly good grades. I have no idea, probably because someone said I couldn't, which is the best thing anyone can ever say to me, is you can't do that. Thanks, awesome, we're off. By the time I left school, I got into uni. Universities have bars on them. Why, would be my question. What does a bar have to do with bettering your education? Because in my instance, it didn't. So I was kicked out of uni 6 weeks in. And I decided at that point I was going to become a rock star in a band and deal drugs. It was awesome. It was one of the highlights in my life. So I was living in a house, dealing drugs with my brother and singing the shittest rock music you've ever heard, playing in fat, dodgy pubs. The outside of that, I also discovered speed, heroin, cocaine, every other drug under the sun. When you're a dealer and you take drugs, you don't make much money, but you develop incredible habits. I was an absolute train wreck by the time I was 20. I can't remember, to be honest, I can't remember being straight or sober between the day I turned 18 and the day I turned 21. There wasn't a single day. I would roll out of bed, do a line, smoke a cone, have a drink, whatever it took to get me to work. Then I'd sneak off to the toilets, have another line, do something else, have another drink. There wasn't a single moment that I was straight or sober in those years. What astounds me now is, how did no one see that? And this is a different time. We're talking about, oh God, I'm giving it away. We're talking about the 80s and early 90s. This was a different time. So I don't hold my parents accountable because you can't see what you don't know. Kind of. Anyway. Needless to say, I was fairly incapable of making good choices about partners at that time. So I got pregnant to my dealer at 21. And I'd been told at 17, because of the trauma I'd gone through as a child, that I wouldn't be able to have children. And I fell pregnant, stuck with the decision that if I don't have this kid, what happens if I'm never going to be able to have one? So that was a no-brainer. I'm going to have a kid. So ready for motherhood. The upside of that is I was able to stop drinking and using drugs. And I was incredibly lucky because for most, that's not a choice. I was so lucky that I was able to stop, and I stopped like that. And I had my son and found myself in an incredibly violent situation with a drug dealer. And one night when my son was about 18 months, 2 years old, things had gone from bad to worse. And he had me held up against the wall by the throat. I was black and blue, and I looked over his shoulder and my little son was standing there watching us. And I remember thinking right then, I'm not raising a son who thinks this is normal. This is not going to happen. So I grabbed my son, I grabbed a bag of clothes and we jumped in the car. By then we were living in a rural property in New South Wales. Sounds familiar? Removed from society, rural property, all that crap. And I drove, we were near Grafton, I drove to the highway and I remember looking in the rear view of this little boy in the back seat and the shame that I felt. There's not a woman in this room who doesn't know what I'm talking about when I talk about shame. And maybe not some men. I'm not a man, so I'm not going to speak of your experience. Women know what shame is. I had so much shame. And I had no idea what to do with it, but I knew I had to do something different because I looked at my life and every single thing I had done had caused me shame. Now I was responsible for a child. Got to the highway, saw a sign to Melbourne and a sign to Lennox Head, thought, don't know which one's closer. It was about 2 a.m. Thought, my best mate lives at Lennox, my family's back in Melbourne. Lucky I turned left because Lennox is 2 hours up the road, Melbourne was 20. It wasn't very bright. And on that drive, I had to think about what I wanted my life to look like. It was one of those light bulb moments. I hate using that term, but it really was. And I had this inkling that the only way I was going to overcome my shame was to make my experiences matter, no matter how shit they were. I had to make them worth something, whether it was the rapes, the assaults, the abuse, the drug addiction, the alcoholism, whatever it was, it had to matter. It had to mean something, or else I didn't mean anything. Because in my mind at that time, I was just a product of all of those things. So I thought about is this person just seeing my chest the entire time?
It's not just one person.
Oh,
Hey.
Got one of you in the room to my attention, and I thought we were friends. You are my new friends. You people.
It's been your face, so it's fine. We can see what you look like behind you.
We'll talk later. Anyway, I decided that helping young people who'd been through similar experiences was probably where I was going to start, and I'm pretty ambitious. So I got to Lennox Head, and within 2 weeks I had my first foster child and a job in child protection. My foster child was 16, I was 22. We laugh now, she's now 38 or something. We laugh so hard about who raised who at that point. I had no idea what I was doing. I was seriously just making it up. I didn't have a clue. And if anyone's been a foster carer or knows foster carers, once you open that door, it doesn't shut. They just keep sending kids your way. So, 33 kids later, I think it was, and 15 years later, and I was getting really well versed on the teenage language. I'm an interpreter now for teenagers. So when a girl says to you, oh my God, like whatever. I mean, what the fuck does that actually mean? Oh my God, like whatever. I know what that means now. The oh my God, they say that when they're about to say something. It's like the inward breath. We breathe, they just say, oh my God, which means look at me, I'm about to speak. So you do, you look at them. Like is their inward breath, and whatever is get fucked. So I'm about to say something, breathe in, get fucked. It's really simple. Anything else you want to know about teenagers and what they say? I've got it absolutely covered. I've heard it all. Anyway, my kids, it went on. I adopted a few of them. There was a household. One night they dared me to go on MasterChef. I said no. They filled out the application form anyway, and that just really writes itself. I showed up to the first audition with no food because they said bring a cold plate. I thought they meant triangle sandwiches. I had no idea, I kid you not, what a bloody cold plate of food was. And then I saw all these people standing around with ceviche and all these fans. I was like, oh, that's what a cold plate is. So I thought, well, this is over and done with. I got a call back. I was like, you're joking. I got nothing, people. So anyway, I got on. It was an accident. I was never meant to be on there. Anyone who watches it will kind of go, what is that chick doing on there? I didn't know what I was doing. Fast forward, what it did do was it enabled me to work internationally with people in crisis. I worked in Cambodia. Prior to that, I built a refuge in the Solomon Islands for women and children in crisis. It gave me a lot of gifts. Being on it wasn't the greatest thing. The backside is I'm standing in front of you. And that's thanks to MasterChef, really. It was mentioned, so after my house burnt down and my mum died, my kids threw in and bought me a trip to Indonesia to go surfing. So I went over there and broke my neck in 2 places and was flown back in a helicopter. And then, that's right, so I was going to say, no, there's something else that happened. And this is what happens. So this will all come back around. I just had a little conversation with myself. I broke my neck in a few places. And then, because of the head injuries I also had, because I haven't talked about all the shit I did trying to be a boy growing up, but I've had 15 major concussions. So, and another one was when I broke my neck. So on the back of that, after having recovered from a broken neck, I had 2 mild strokes. The last one was last year. Hence why things just come to me because I forget. So I go around circles a bit. So I had 2 mild strokes and had to overcome those. And I'm so fortunate because I've had so much adversity that I actually know what to do when shit goes sideways. Like I'm so good at it. So what I'm going to talk to you about after, because what we're going to do is we're going to have a little break because you've all had to put up with me for 20 minutes now, which is enough for anyone. So I'm going to let you forget about me for another 20 minutes and come back, and then you're going to get the harsh reminder that you have another 20 minutes. But what I'm going to talk about in that time is adversity being your greatest asset. And as a woman, thank God, you know, because being a woman puts us in an adverse position on a daily basis. How do you make that your greatest asset? How does that work? How do you become unstoppable every single day? Fortunately, we're like pebbles in a human slingshot. The further they drag us down, the further we fly. So don't ever look at an experience and think, that was shit, I'm going to forget about that. Go, that was shit, how do I use it? And you'll get plenty. You've all got plenty. There's not a person in this room that doesn't have their own story. Not one. Let's figure out how to use them. So thank you for the first half of tolerating me.
Just sat there and calls myself. I wouldn't crack any jokes towards Jules. But for those of you that know me in the audience, shit, I think I found my soul sister. So it's kind of scary that, you know, I walked in this morning going, they put a dress on me, but you can't make me a girl just by putting a dress on me. Jules, I love you. So guys, we are going to take a 20-minute break now because there's a lot of women here and there's not a lot of toilets out there and it's going to take a lot of time. But again, if you need to use it or when you want to use the grazing platter, sanitise your hands first and use the utensils. But in saying that as well, guys, when we do come back from this break, I'm going to encourage those that are up the back. Adam Barker, this is aimed at you, so you can be first in the room. We have 12 seats. I work in finance, I can count. 12 seats at the front of the room. For those of you that can't hear everything at the back, please do move down the front. I promise I won't heckle or make fun of you. Shit, I lied. I probably will. But if you can't hear everything down the back, I am probably one of the loudest people in the room today, so I'll move down the back. But take the seats up the front. We do want to make sure that you do hear part 2 of what Jules has to say this afternoon. For those of you, again, that need a reminder, the toilets are out the door, follow the signs. The QR codes are around the venue for anybody that wants to put a donation forward. And our photo wall is over to the right-hand side of the room with the lovely neon sign. Please do make sure you get your photos taken today with the hands up symbol for International Women's Day. The grazing platters are up the back. Grab another drink and don't come back sloshed. I'll see you for round 3 shortly. Everybody sitting down. What I'm going to do to the gentleman... We've got cackling hyenas going on at the moment. It's always our outsource or always the loudest people in the room. Those of you that just made yourselves comfortable at the back of the room, I'm going to be that person and ask you at the back of the room, guys, yo. Oh, it might be my usual jovial self. They are watching from home, so I do need to watch my P's and Q's in case there's children in the room, blah, 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 COVID warning, all that, blah, blah, blah. Guys, for those of you sitting at the back of the room, I'll ask you to come forward for me and sit towards the front. We do have a few people that have unfortunately had to leave us 2 settlements, or the fact that they thought they could claim their CPD and leave. What they don't realise is we have their name and their number and they won't be getting their CPD. So guys, up the back, move forward for me. Come forward, come forward, come forward. Trust me, if you don't move forward, I start singing and nobody wants to be subjected to that level of pain. Jules, I think I just got lipstick on the microphone.
I'm not using that one.
Okay, guys, if I can just have your attention for 2 seconds. See, this is what happens when you get women and you add alcohol. Honestly, you could have all picked the mocktails, not the cocktails.
So let's go.
Okay, guys, bringing you back into the room for now. We've got the viewers watching from home and Jules is doing Jules. Something really weird going on here. Jules is just Madonna micing herself up now. So guys, bringing you back in. For those of you that are at home, you missed, well, you had Jules version 1 and you also got to see Jules's chest quite frequently. She's now putting a Madonna mic in to avoid the chest. She's just turned the mic on a little too close to me. Something that I'm going to share with you all, because I can get away with this today, because my partner's obviously not in the room, and my partner will probably never watch this, and my partner won't divorce me because I let him go away for the night tonight down to the Gold Coast.
We'll have to get away from that speaker too.
Jules mentioned before that there's nothing cool about a mullet.
There's not.
Jules, some of you are going to be able to see this picture, and I'm quite willing to show some of you this picture come the next break. This is my other half. For those of you that can see it, he doesn't have a mullet, he has a Malay. I refuse to call it a mullet. The worst side about that picture is he has the sugarcane champagne in the background, which is Bundaberg rum. So nothing screams masculine like Bundaberg rum and a Malay.
It's not a Malay.
It's a Malay.
It's a mullet.
No, it's a Malay.
In any country, honey. Mullet and Bundaberg.
So guys, I'm going to hand it back over to Jules. I hope you've got enough. If you need to go to the bathroom during the break, I suggest you don't, because I will make you sing and
embarrass you. Between the 2 of us, we will publicly embarrass her.
She just got real, guys. It's back over to Jules.
Yeah. Welcome back. Hope you all drank up during the break. So, part 2.
Hang on, Jules. The camera's in front of you this time.
Hi! Anyway, who wouldn't? Look at those bad boys. Woo! Anyone who's had kids, suck the life out of your little buggers. Anyway, I'm not going to go into it. So glad you don't have a microphone. Some boy. Jesus, haven't we got raucous after lunch? Last year I spoke at the year before last, before COVID, I spoke at the Business Chicks event with 600 women, and it was me and Gillian Triggs who used to be in Parliament. And they just, like, you go to that event to get pissed, I discovered. No one gives a shit about the speakers, they're just going to get hammered. So there were 600 women. I don't know how much champagne was drunk before we took the stage, but it was so loud. And Gillian leant over and she went, "It's just about shutting them up, really, isn't it?" And I was like, oh my God. So you guys, you know, go hard to compete with that. I was going to talk to you about overcoming adversity, and there's a couple of key things that need to happen, and I gave a whole TED talk on it, so, you know, just let me plug that for a second, go and watch that, because I'm not going to do the whole 17 minutes. I get asked to talk about resilience all the time, and I refuse to. And I'm sorry, because I know that the next speaker's talking about resilience. I don't have a problem with resilience. I have a problem with the fact that I think we're missing a few key ingredients that aren't discussed enough. One of the reasons I've been able to overcome and use the adversity in my life is because of acceptance, not because of resilience, in my opinion. I can't do what I do if I don't accept what I've been through. It is so important to accept what it is that you go through in life. Most of what we go through in life, we either don't choose, we don't have a hell of a lot to say over, or in my case, it just happens by accident. The only job I have to do after that is accept it, and once I've accepted it, I have a capacity to do something with it. To me, once again, my own personal opinion, I speak to young people a lot and young people in crisis a lot. I don't think our young people are lacking resilience, I think they're lacking acceptance. My personal opinion. And when you've got social media and popular media showing them everything that they're meant to be and they're not, how are they meant to accept themselves? It's almost impossible. They don't lack resilience. We're born with resilience. We're born hardwired to struggle. When given struggle, we come up to the challenge. That's why I'm so good at this, because I've been given heaps of them. And I don't resent the struggles. And it's, look, let's not say that I've had my Netflix days, I've had my downtimes. I've had times where I didn't think I was going to get through. I haven't always looked at life this way, and I don't always look at life this way. There are times when I get knocked sideways, and in those moments, I'm not standing there saying, thank God this happened. It's not how it works. What I do now, which I could never do, is I'm actually kinder to myself. I'm kind to myself. I let myself recover, and then I look at what I've been through and figure out what I do with it from that point on. I had a really interesting experience, and the reason I talk about this is because I don't think we can become unstoppable if we're not a collective. We can't. I'm very careful about who I spend my time with. When I'm trying to make big changes, when I decided to report my boss on Saturday, there was 3 friends I rang, 3 friends who I knew would have my back, 3 friends who spoke my language, who weren't going to question me, who weren't going to gaslight me, who weren't going to tell me that I was being dramatic or over the top. I am so selective about the 5 people I spend most time with, because those 5 people are an absolute reflection of who you are and who you're going to be. Thanks to COVID, I'm now insanely sensitive to that. So when I'm around someone and I find myself behaving or thinking in a way that I don't like, I kind of peg it really quickly now and go, okay. And I step out. There's been some amazing gifts in COVID for me. One of the things I have come to understand about being a woman, and, you know, we had a shocking example last week in Parliament. And it's interesting because the topic of this day is that careers have no gender, but we assign gender to careers. We do. I do too. And I know, quick run, I've been a brickies labourer, a builder's labourer, electrician's labourer, a roof tiler, and I now work 4 times a year in a remote billionaires island for billionaires from the States as a surf guide and a lifesaver. First female in the world to do that. And what I did in those roles initially was I would go and watch how the guys did it and I would copy them until I realised that didn't work. And so now when I'm life-saving and I'm surf coaching, I have a different approach, because as women we have different assets. They're not weaknesses. I can be vulnerable, I can be compassionate, I can care too much. I can do all these things that I thought was so weak. At the moment, I'm the most vulnerable person in this room. Guarantee it. Anyone want to test me out? Put this mic on, stand up here, see how you feel. I'm not weak, but I'm the most vulnerable person in this room. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is our greatest point of connection. Because if I couldn't be vulnerable, there's no bloody way I could have this conversation with you people right now. So I value it. When I'm out in the surf now, I know the people who are a bit nervous will stay really close to me because they know I've got their backs. They won't be with one of the guys. So if we want to change what careers look like for women, we have to bring our own unique qualities to that position and stop replicating what it is that we see in the masculine version of that we don't like. Because we're just doing the same. We saw it with, is it Linda Reynolds? Did I get that name right? Who called Brittany Higgins a lying cow during the week. She behaved that way because she'd become that person to survive in a man's world. I'm going to use a really common example of something that none of us pay attention to. I personally think, and this is my own personal belief, and people might argue me in this room, love it when they do, we're not moving forwards because we as women are holding one another back. We need to start celebrating each other's successes and stop being threatened by them. We have to stop being jealous of one another's successes. We have to start realising that we connect through vulnerability, not through success and strength, not through behaving like men and being masculine and banging our chests. That is not what connects us as women. One thing we do as women and men all the time, in culture, constantly, is behave really badly towards one another, daily. And if you want an example of that, turn on Maps, Married at First Sight, and see how you behave watching that. I can't tell you how angry I get every time those shows are paraded around. Because what's your job as a viewer? Your job is to sit down and pick the shit out of those girls. You've got a choice in life. You can strengthen the muscle of kindness 50 times a day. You can find out the name of the waitress who's been serving us so dutifully all day and ask her a question about her life. Make her feel like she matters in the room. Strengthen the muscle of kindness. Or you can watch Maps and strengthen the muscle of being an asshole. See how far that's going to get us as women. Seriously, watch it every night. You'll become really, really good at picking on that girl for the fact that she chose to get her lips done, the fact that she might not be as bright as you in that particular area, or she looks like that, or she says that, or however they edit her to be. And God knows I know something about editing when it comes to reality TV. Make a choice about which side you want to be on if we're going to become unstoppable. Because I want to be on the winning side. And I want to be the one who stands there at the top of the ladder, if I'm lucky enough to get there, and pulls up someone and says, come with me. Let's keep going. Or someone who's kicked down and not coping. One of the things that shits me the most about working with young girls in crisis is when they're behaving in a way that people find unfavourable. The common comment is, oh, she's just attention seeking. Do you know what people do when a young girl attention seeks? They turn their back and walk away because she's just attention seeking. As a result of that, a young girl I know last week threw herself in front of a train because she was attention seeking. So everyone ignored her. How the hell are we meant to become unstoppable when we as women are doing that to one another? Men will do what they do. That's not what's going to change. You know, I was furious last week, and I don't get very angry very often, but I was pissed off all week because what I heard people saying was, oh, it's so good we're having the conversation now. We've been having the conversation for years. I'm sick of the conversation. And the only thing that's going to change that is that we, as individual women, decide to do something different every single day. And it starts with not bitching about one another, not making a passing comment on what shoes she's wearing, or what she looks like, or what choices she's made. They're hers. They're her choices and they're her right to make them. We need to turn that around. I had an incident that happened to me which made me realise how crippling this is. About 3 years ago, just before my mother died, I knew I had a window of opportunity to take the abusers who abused me when I was young to court and have them charged. And I knew it was going to be no small feat, given it was 40 years ago. My mother had always denied my sexual abuse. When I was at the age of 6 and told her about it, she denied it. When I was 16, she denied it. When I was 21, she denied it. But as she became sick, she became vulnerable and she became real. And we developed a relationship that we'd never had before. And I'm so lucky I had that time with her, because up until then I hated her and she hated me. We openly admitted that we hated one another. But in that last year, as she kind of disintegrated into dementia, we fell in love with one another and we got to know one another. So I saw this window and I sat her down one day and I said, Mum, I need your help. I've made a statement to the police. I want these 2 guys charged. And she sat there very quietly for a minute and I thought this could go in any direction, because I hadn't brought it up in about 20 years. And she said, okay, I'll do it. You could have knocked me off my chair. And I said, do you remember? And she said, yeah, I do. I had a choice then to sit in the fury of knowing that she knew what was going on, or sit in the opportunity to actually make a change together. For whatever reason, she was incapable of doing anything about it at the time. I don't judge her for that. I know as a parent we do the best we can with what we've got, that's it. They came out and took her statement. It was such good timing, because about a week or 2 later, she wasn't lucid enough to have made that statement that wouldn't have been credible in court. Timing for me in life, never great. So house burns down, partner leaves, mum's dies, kids leave home. About a week later, I think it was the day after mum's funeral, I get a phone call from the police saying, right, they've been arrested and charged in simultaneous raids on their house. Sorry? You know, they don't actually tell you about the process while it's going on. I've just made a statement several months earlier. And they said, you're going to have to appear in court. My response was, now's not a great time. Do you think you could just postpone it for a little bit? Apparently you can't. So a few days later, I found myself on a train with my best mate going up to Melbourne to the OPP's office to make a statement to meet my barrister, my solicitor, and understand the process of what goes on. If someone came to me in this room today and said, this is what's happened to me, I'm going to the police and I want to have them charged, I would say, don't do it. Because all this jumping up and down in politics at the moment, we're missing one key fundamental thing. And that is, until we change the legal system, there will be no justice. So what happened is I got to speak to my solicitor and barrister. They weren't allowed to discuss the case with me. The perpetrators were allowed to discuss the case with their solicitor and barrister. They were allowed to sit in the courtroom. My family weren't. I had to give evidence from a closed room. I'm a strong person, as you might have gathered. I'm tough as shit, to be honest, as most of you probably are. I went into that closed room and I got absolutely stripped to pieces in a way that I could not have predicted. And what they threatened to do, they'd done their homework well and they knew that my family was hanging on by a thread. I had a dad and a brother left, that was it. They threatened to dismantle that, tried to make out that the abusers were my dad and my brother and that I had it all wrong. You can imagine the terror of me thinking I'm just about to lose everything I've got. The reason they got this information was they found an ex-boyfriend of mine who was also a drug addict, a pimp, an alcoholic with mental health issues who I had to take an ABO out on when I was 18 because he threatened to kill me and my family. They tracked him down and this entire case hinged on what he had said. How? How does a case ride on the testimony of an unstable drug addict alcoholic who has ABOs out on him? The moment that broke me, I was hanging in there, just. The moment that broke me was when this ex-boyfriend's name was Mark, I won't say his surname, when I realised what he'd done and I just went, fucking Mark. And the female barrister and solicitor were there and the female solicitor for the defence said to me, sorry, what was that you said? And I said, fucking Mark. And she turned around to the perpetrators who were sitting just beside her and she winked at them both and she said, we've got her. That's what broke me. It's not what men do to me that have broken me in my life, it's what women do. Every time. Every time it's what women do to me. It's also what women do to me that inspire me. We don't have to bring masculinity to male-dominated roles. Look at Jacinta Ardern. A woman who sits in her pyjamas and gives speeches after tucking the kids into bed and breastfeeding. Fair to say she hasn't brought masculinity to the role, has she? You know, women bring me up as much. We're not defined by our experiences. We're defined by what we choose to do with our experiences. And the toughest people I know who've had the biggest adversities to overcome, the most successful, the Oprah Winfreys, the Barack Obamas, all the people who I look up to for inspiration have had to overcome enormous adversity, and they do it with integrity and they lead knowing that their social responsibility is to everyone. I was talking to someone on the break about, you know, they'll know who I'm talking about, but we were talking about the social responsibility of men and women and how we address people differently. And I'm like, can't we just fuck that shit off and be human? Can't we just have humanity in every conversation that we have? I don't care. I've got so many I live in St Kilda in Melbourne. There's more homeless people than there's people in houses. I have coffee with those people quite often and I take the time to sit and chat because they matter. We have one job in this life and it's to make people matter. That's it. One job. But as a woman, I have a social responsibility to make sure that every woman coming next to me, beside me, in front of me, behind me, knows that they matter and what goes on for them matters. And I can't do that if I'm bitching about them. We need to change what we do. And we're all capable of it. But until we do that, there will be no forward momentum. We will be having this conversation in 5 years and 10 years. We will be calling a rape victim a fucking lying cow. Who says that? No one knows if she was or wasn't raped, but who says that about anyone? We need to change the rhetoric. We are right at the turning point, ladies, of making enormous changes. Not talking, actually making changes. The other thing that needs to happen in order for us to make changes, we have to sit in uncomfortability. The reason I've led an incredibly extraordinary life is I'm always fucking uncomfortable. And if I'm not uncomfortable, I'm bored and self-destructive. That's not pretty, by the way. Ask my children. If I get bored, oh God. So sit in uncomfortability. If something feels like it's just out of your reach, lean in. I don't feel that comfortable in 10-foot surf with 5 lives I'm responsible for. I fake it. You will all be fine. Fuck me, we're going to drown. You know, I don't feel that comfortable as Jax with a stop-go sign walking in and going, Jesus, you're big, and there's a 6'4" guy standing in front of me who's a massive tray. Life, I'm not comfortable up here, but it matters. Do things that make you uncomfortable. That's what's going to make you unstoppable. Be the person that you need to be in order to create change. Look at people and go, I want to be that. Take notes on what they do and don't do. I guarantee you don't want to be the person who's sitting there denigrating another woman. None of us want to be that, so let's stop doing it. Can we just make a vow right now, we're just not going to do it anymore? And it takes time. It takes time because we're not perfect. And we do judge. We do, everyone judges. We do it, but try and pull yourself up. And especially pull yourself up before you say it. Just don't say it. If we start there, imagine where we're going to be. Because our kids are watching us watch maths. Our daughters, our sons are watching us and going, that behaviour's okay. It's not okay. So it's time to stop it. It's not that hard. Once we do that, God help us. We will be bloody unstoppable. Thank you. Love you all.
I'll get to put the hands together again for Jules Allen. We have got questions. I've got a lot of questions. Jules,
I've unhooked my ear.
does it
Help.
This is that arsehole moment, right?
Friends, are we friends now?
Well, look, we made friends.
Sorry about the mullet comment. I didn't mean it. Okay.
Yeah, you're in.
Come in.
I think you're in.
So we did. Is this you?
Are you or me?
I don't know.
It's not about you. No, it is about you. Do you want me to put the disclaimer over it first? Caveat? Okay, here's the caveat part. So guys, if you do have any questions for Jules that you don't want to ask in front of an open audience, you can write them on your agenda or on a piece of paper and hand them to me, and I will ask Jules for you and we'll get a direct answer from you. Or if you've got the balls to do it, like Jules said, if you want to make a change and become unstoppable, you can put your hand up now and ask a question for Jules. I will run, actually it'll be like a really quick shuffle in these heels, to get the microphone to you so you're able to...
Someone ask a question up the back just so I can see that.
Don't even have to be put your hand up. I'm not running.
There's nothing you can't ask me, clearly. There's kind of no topics off limits. The other thing is if you do want to write a question down and obviously don't want you to know, people to know that you asked it, that's fine. Second to that, my email address is with some of these people. I do respond to people, maybe not the same day because I'm always on planes, trains and all over the place, but I always get back to you. So if there is something that comes up on the back of this that you want to talk about, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Because, you know, we're all kind of all in this together. So I don't have the answers to anything or everything or sometimes nothing, but, you know, we're going to have a chat. I don't have any friends, so just, you know, your friends are good.
So I should ad-lib this part and go, George, Jake.
Just an interesting, I don't know if it's a question or a comment or I'd like to get your approach on it. I've got a almost 14-year-old son. And
Sorry. At least it's not a daughter.
But interestingly enough, there's a very pretty young girl that plays baseball with him. And she is in a rep team with him, and she's one of 3 girls that play on a team of 13 boys. Interesting in itself. We had a very interesting weekend last weekend when my son came home very upset. Mum, I've just hit someone. Shit, here we go. Now what? I've hit one of my mates from baseball that I've been playing together for years. Why did you hit your mate? He turned around to me and asked me if I'd licked out such and such a girl. Now, I sat on this for about 12 hours. Went, do I say something as a mother? I'm the manager of the team as well, and I deal with these boys on a regular basis, and they know I don't take a lot of shit. And I sat there and sat there. Do I say something? Do I say something? And I went, no, screw it. She's a 12-year-old girl in a room with 13 boys being treated like an absolute object. So I took it out against the team. If this ever happens again, I'm going to rip your heads off, shoving their asses. Not quite in those words, quite dumbed down.
That would have worked.
The thing I found interesting of it is the 3 people, the 3 boys in the team that were causing all the trouble were the 3 mothers that rang me within about half an hour. And I had the very interesting conversation with one of those mothers going, was it my son? Yes. What did he say? Oh, shit. He said this, can't be my son. Yes, it was. Interestingly, into that, there's been something at the school this week around kids from the age of 9 to 16 on trains watching porn whilst they go home. Being that you speak, teenage speak, how do you approach that? As I say, I'm pretty harsh, I'm pretty straightforward. My son gets treated like an adult a lot of the time. He hears a lot of things he probably shouldn't. But it's those parents that modify their sons and their daughters to accept what is said to them without question. And I just don't agree, and I'd like to get your opinion.
Yeah, it's something I've dealt with a lot, obviously. We can't parent other parents, and we can't tell other parents how to parent their children. Entitlement leads to all sorts of destruction. That's what I know. I've worked at the lowest socioeconomics in society to the highest echelons, and I won't give you my straight opinion on that, but do not mollycoddle your children. If you want to give your kids a good life, make it bloody hard for them. And as far as the conversation around porn, and I'll come back to the comment I was just about to make about one of my own sons. Talk about it. They'll want to die in front of you. They'll want you to shut up. They will do anything to get out of that room. It will be the worst 15, 20 minutes, half an hour of their life. Suck it up, sunshine, because we're going to have this conversation. Because the truth is, before intimacy now, young boys and girls' first glimpse at sexual interaction is porn. 90% of the time. That's their first impression of what sex is porn, not intimacy. So that conversation has to be had again and again and again and again and again, and keep calling it out and keep calling it out. And it's, you know, I struggle just as much as what I see girls doing in response to that as I do boys. This is not a gender issue once again. This is, we've all got our part to play in this one. I remember saying to my boys, and it was probably a little late to have the conversation, they're about 15, 16, I think. I've got 3 really close together. What happens when you adopt is they kind of go boom, 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 boom. Because people look at me and goes, geez, you had them close together. I'm like, yeah, how is that possible? They're 4 months apart. Have a think. Anyway, but they all look the same, which is weird. Anyway, I sat the boys down one day and I said, guys, we need to have a bit of a chat, because they were both sexually active, one a hell of a lot more so than the other. The other one was picking up the crumbs of that one. We're not going to go that. Still does. It's a small point. And I said, I need to talk to you. I don't know if, because they didn't have a father. So, you know, there was a lot of conversations I had to have and still do have to have that they hate me for. And I said, I need to talk to you about, you know, sex and this and that. And one of them, the one who has a lot of sex, is very cocky. He was like, bring it on, Muzzy. And I was like, here we go.
And I said, so, you know that having sex with a woman, it's not just about you being pleasured. It's, and he goes, let me just stop you there. If you're talking about pleasing women, there is nothing that gives me greater joy. My work here is done. Thank you for coming. Absolutely trumped me. Couldn't get out of the room quick enough. Right, conversation had. So clearly we'd had a lot of conversations. There was not many conversations that were off limits in our household. So, it had obviously, anyway. And drugs was the same. We talked a lot about drugs. I didn't have a no policy because it doesn't work. You've got to tell me what you're taking, where you're at, who you're with, and give me a phone number. And that's it, because that's the best you can do. Because I know if someone says no, I reckon now if someone said, you can't do cocaine on that table, I've done cocaine 20 years, but if someone racked up and said, you're not allowed to touch that, I'd go, fuck you. And I'd rack up a line, not because I want to do cocaine, because they told me I couldn't. Certain parts of us don't change. So the no conversation doesn't work. So I'm a bit liberal like that, but it's in my experience, and I've had a little bit now, it kind of works. Sometimes.
Jules, you wonder why I've got a cat.
Oh, no, I don't.
Not sexy.
I totally support your decision to have a cat. And if I had my time again,
You'd have a cat.
I wouldn't even have a cat. I wouldn't have a pot plant. I would have nothing. No, I don't. I love my children.
I can't kill it. Stand here. No, the cat definitely doesn't do cocaine, let me tell you. Not that I know of, she hasn't racked up recently, so it's it's kind of cool there. But Jules, look, I'm going to throw it in there as well with the kids and the side of it. Although I don't have children, it's always a caveat. And for those viewers playing it from home, Jules saying she's going to rack up cocaine, there is none at the venue. She's not going to do it. And to the federal police that are watching this, we don't know her, we didn't employ her, she was on this, she brought it up. Everybody. But guys, I do have 13 godchildren now, because apparently all your friends go, you don't have kids, here you have this one. And I've gone through the same thing. My godson was 9, 10, 10, I think, Central Coast of New South Wales, where drugs, sex, porn, you name it. We had to change the sheets on his bed one day because she's a helicopter mother, and took the mattress off the bed, underneath the bed, pictures of girls' boobs. And he thought life had ended because his godmother had found pictures of boobs. For me, it was kind of like, Paddy, mate, sit down, let's have a talk. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this to me. But it's okay, mate, they're only boobs. And if that's the worst that this is going to be, I don't see a problem in it. And he's like, yeah, but you're not mum. And I got it. So sometimes it's the extended version of mum and dad that can have that conversation, can talk about the drugs, can talk about the girls, can talk about all of that. And I know that most of my godchildren now, apart from one of them threatening on the weekend because I was home in Sydney, that he was moving in with me and he got reminded why that wasn't happening. They will go to an extended family member to have that conversation, not just mum and dad, but the extended family members also got to balls up and tell mum and dad. Because so many of them go, it's okay, I can deal with this, but they forget to tell mum and dad what's going on. And a problem can actually get worse. So, Jules, I think I'm going to speak on behalf of every single person that is or isn't a parent in the room to say thank you so much for today. I'm assuming there are no other questions.
I just want to say that we all have each other's back as women.
I think we do. Oh, and there's men in here that have got our backs too. I can't just say, but look, we've all got each other's backs. I think that's...
Yeah, I just want to add, I feel fortunate that I've got 3 children. I've got 2 boys and a girl. And, for me personally, boys have been easier than a girl.
Oh my God, hello. I'd have 10 more boys. One more girl would kill me. That'd be just to dig my own grave.
And she's 14 and,
sorry.
Did you say sorry?
Yeah.
I adore her. I love her. But it is the challenge of everything that goes with it, with social media, with the pornography, with the drugs, the alcohol at school, the friends, the social connections and stuff. And it is a challenge. It does move me incredibly because not only do I have that challenge with my own children, but it's all about us parents having each other's back.
Absolutely.
And I had a mum the other day reach out and we were incredibly transparent with one another about the heartaches that we were experiencing and the highs and the lows. And just by us having this conversation, we opened up a Pandora's box our daughters
Good on
and what
you.
they've been up to.
Good on you.
And yeah, look, it's just.
Yeah, I can feel that, and it's so true. We need to have tough conversations. When I was talking about having one another's backs and not itching, I've had an incredible sense of this room of good people. There's not a person in this room, but I'm talking about as a huge collective, and the tiny subtle things we let go because society presents it and puts it in front of us, and we just kind of go along with the tide. Got to stop going along with the tide. Not a single comment goes unnoticed by our children. Not one. I remember dropping the C-bomb so bad. I'm going to say once, but that would be a lie. Anyway. And then my son recently, about 12 months ago, he's 23 now, but he dropped it and I went, "Excuse me, young man." He went, "You raised me." He's only heard me say it once. That was enough.
And the other was Jax.
And it was Jax. It wasn't even me, for God's sakes. It was friggin' Jax. So nothing goes. We now have a social responsibility. We are all responsible, the men, the women of this room. You know, I actually, in my world, and this is only my world, so it's what I can speak of, I work with men. I've got a lot of female friends. I hear women bitch about women more than I do men. That's my experience. So I'm not going to shift the blame and go, we're not moving forward because of them. That's not true. It's a collective. So let's get this shit right.
So, folks, I don't even know how you top that, right? Can I get you to put your hands together again for Julius Allen this afternoon? I was going to say, now that we have taken the microphone off Jules, I'm going to admit, although she's not telling
I'm so loud.
Oh, that's your pack setting off our speaker, but that's okay. We're good now. So I'm going to say it, Jules, while you run back up the other end, I am one of those assholes with maths. I'm going to own it. I'm going to take it. But it's more so my anger gets directed at the men on there because there's probably two guys on there at the moment. I'm going to say are total dicks. I'm going to throw it out there for the girls at the moment that with something I never got into. It's like Farmer Wants a Shag. It's another great show on TV that I love to watch because, let's face it, we all like to be critical. So we've got the chatters down in the front row and Nadine's chatting in the front row. Stand up here and keep myself amused. But guys, what I'm going to do, I took absolutely no notes during Jules' session because I could relate to so much of it. And not because, obviously, I've got children and we've gone through it today, I've got a cat. But more so because where we sit in today's society, we do need to become unstoppable. But to do that, we have to support each other through it. And I'm not saying I'm also going to go out and foster 30-odd children anytime soon. So guys, I'm looking up at the screen at the moment and surprisingly enough, this lovely face is not in the room with us today. Georgia is joining us down the back, who's representing Len. Danelle unfortunately couldn't be here. And I say this because I know that she's logged in online at the moment. And I know that because she's also sent me a message today. Donnie has taken what we would all deem as much needed me time. So she's away on annual leave at the moment, but she is joining us from the wonderful place of Hamilton Island. Not going to say anything there. But guys, from my point of view, it is always a pleasure to have our sponsors sit behind us. And Danelle has been a great supporter now of the FBAA for the past 2 years from Len's position. So I'm just going to welcome her obviously up to the panel as well. She will be joining shortly. And I'm going to hand over to her on her session for today.
Hi everyone and welcome to International Women's Day for 2021. This is an absolutely marvellous event and I'm very thankful and appreciative to be able to join you all virtually. Unfortunately or fortunately, I already had a holiday booked and I am in Hamilton Island. So again, it's a day that I could not miss. So thank you for allowing me to join you again. For me, the successes that I've been able to have in this industry are not based on my gender. They are based on the personal characteristics. So I certainly appreciate that in the past, women have either lacked confidence or support to be able to achieve what they want to in the industry. And I think that that is definitely changing. But one of the key characteristics that we actually need is resilience. And I thought the best way to demonstrate resilience and how important it is to hold that characteristic and to certainly tap into that is best told by sharing a story with you. about a woman who has displayed resilience from a very early age. So I'm just going to share my screen with you now. So please bear with me while I do so. And that's all there and ready to go. So I want to talk to you about resilience and why it's so important, because resilience is obviously, when you look at the actual dictionary explanation, is the ability to mentally or emotionally cope with a crisis or return to pre-crisis status quickly. So resilience exists when the person uses mental processes and behaviours in promoting personal assets and protecting themselves from the potential negative effects. So I want to tell you a story about a woman who was born in 1975 and in 1979 her brother was born. Her parents were paramedics and a nurse's aide, and also very heavily involved in sport. So her father was the head trainer of a very large AFL or VFL back then football club, and also was still playing there. She was actually a smart little cookie, and when she finished prep, moved straight on to grade 2, skipping grade 1, which automatically put her in a position of being at least 18 months younger than everyone in her class, and that continued all through her schooling. As a result of the work that her dad did with the footy club, she actually spent a lot of time at the footy and a lot of time at home socialising with the players and their kids and their wives, having barbecues, either celebrating or commiserating. So it was not unusual to have the house full either on a Saturday or a Sunday night. And around 1984, the head statistician at the football club became a very close family friend. Would often visit the home and would regularly pop in to say goodnight to the kids. So between the ages of 9 and 11, this young girl was faced with situations that she knew were not okay. She knew that what was happening to her was not normal, but she was continually told that it was, and she was not to tell anyone. Towards the end of grade 5, there was an altercation that her little brother actually witnessed, and he grabbed her hand and he said, "You have to tell Mummy and Daddy what just happened." And so with that, the young girl went and spoke to her parents. They were shocked. They were unsure of the story, but most of all, they were extremely comforting. Due to the profile of the predator, he was not only a school teacher, a head statistician, but had also started his career as an international cricket umpire. The family decided that we would deal with this situation as a family. The young girl managed to what she now recognises as compartmentalisation, but most importantly, started demonstrating the signs of resilience. She wanted to keep living her best young life. So the young girl started martial arts. She joined many club sports and in 1986 was crowned Little Miss Tasmania personality. The social circle that the family had been involved in had disintegrated, and there were many questions around why this disintegration happened and why the fallout with this particular person. So the family packed up and moved to a small country town in 1989. A couple of years later, it was here at the age of 15 that the girl was confronted again by her vile attacker in the most unusual of circumstances. She was walking to the local swimming hole with her high school boyfriend, and in between her backyard and that swimming hole was the local cricket ground. And there was a celebrity radio station cricket game, which this man happened to be umpiring. As she jumped the fence, they connected eyes. She recognised him, he recognised her, and with that, the girl began uncontrollably shaking, jumped the fence and fell into a heap and began to explain to her 16-and-a-half-year-old boyfriend what was wrong. The rest of the family had travelled to Launceston that day to participate in a sporting event with her younger brother, and she let her boyfriend know that her parents would be completely unhappy and devastated that this man was on our back doorstep. What was scarier was that within a couple of minutes, this perpetrator was walking her backyard. This fence that you see in this photo, within 3 minutes, the young woman or young girl was pushed up against this fence. The language, the words that were coming from her perpetrator's mouth were unbelievable, and her boyfriend could hear it. He ran out of the kitchen with a fry pan and chased the man down the backyard. As soon as her parents arrived home, remember this is pre-mobile, so no mobile phones, her parents then had a more, I guess, a reassurance that the story or the tales of years ago were true. Now they wanted to act, but the young girl was now 15 and she didn't want to do that. She wanted to continue with her life. She was about to head to college for year 11 and 12. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived in the mail from the perpetrator. What a silly, silly thing to do. That letter was so degrading and so vulgar that her parents decided to keep that letter in case it was ever needed down the track. The next 5 years, the girl actually struggled. She received her qualifications to be able to get into uni in the first year of matriculation, but left home at 17 because the relationship between her parents at the time was strained. She got a cadetship at the local newspaper, and there she met what would be her first husband. He was an elite level cricket player in Tassie as well, and the young woman now needed to let him know what had happened, as she certainly didn't want to run into this man in her circles. In 1996, 1 year after the birth of her son and 6 months after getting married, she was 20, about to turn 21, and found herself as a single mother, divorced, working full-time and still playing elite level sport. During this time, she partied hard when her son was visiting his dad, and one night playing a game of truth and dare with girlfriends over passion pop, she shared her story. 2 years later, at work, she met the man who would become her husband, her best friend, and her greatest supporter, a man of strength and intelligence. And very quickly, she shared her horrific story of her past, and soon he became her pillar of strength. Because not more than 3 months later, she received a phone call that she can still recall word for word and brought her world crashing down. It was one of her girlfriends who actually she had shared this story with during the Truth or Dare conversation, who worked for the ABC media. The young woman answered the phone and her girlfriend said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I wasn't sure whether to believe you at the time, but he's been arrested and it's going to be all over the media tomorrow." After collapsing on the kitchen floor, her partner called her mother, and her mother was on the doorstep in 20 minutes with an old leather briefcase that belonged to her grandfather. This briefcase held that vulgar letter that she had received. Together, her parents and partner had decided it was now time to take action. She called the Crime Stoppers number that was all over the media articles, and she wasn't sure at that time whether she wanted to press charges herself or whether she was simply wanting to give the letter to the police as evidence. Within 3 hours, 4 policemen were on her doorstep. Over several weeks, they convinced the woman and her family to press their own charges, as they would be splitting the victims into 2 groups. Trial 1 would consist of all the children who he had offended as a school teacher, and group 2, which is where this woman fell into, was all the young children who had been abused by him outside of the school grounds. The young woman was also sure to get her justice due to still having the letter, and that she had told important people in her life about this story before it was ever released. The young woman was a key witness in the non-committal trial, which is basically where the other side get to hear all the evidence. He was set to stand trial, and the woman agreed to read the letter out in court for the first trial as evidence. She would get her day in court as part of the second trial. This also meant involving her high school boyfriend, her first husband, her current partner and her family, and her girlfriend who worked at the ABC, because this also validated the charges that he was facing. It also became a really difficult time for her family, the guilt. The guilt of not acting in the 80s, the guilt of not acting in the early 90s, the guilt of maybe perhaps being able to stop him from doing this to somebody else. As always, they worked through everything together with hours and hours of counselling and endless support from the Crown prosecution team. Again, this woman drew on her resilience to get through this. Trial 1 began. The girl walked into the courtroom and read that vile letter in front of the whole courtroom. The looks, the tears and the gasps from the people in that room is something that she will never forget. On the 13th of August, 1999, he was sentenced to 4 years jail. Was it enough? No. But the girl knew that the second trial would hand him another sentence and that he would serve the time that he deserved. He had been doing this since 1982. 4 weeks later, the woman's world came crashing down yet again. And due to the unfair trial legislation in Tasmania, his lawyer filed and successfully won an unfair trial submission. The girl would never get her day in court. The girl would never get her justice, and neither did any of the victims that were in that second trial. The woman had the choice then to be like so many of his other victims, to slide down that slippery slope, to find an addiction, but she didn't. She didn't give up on the world, and she didn't give up on her family and her son. In December of that same year, 1999, this young woman turned 24. Please, if you don't already know a young lady called Grace Tame, please look her up. And that's my timer, because I knew that this would be a little bit of a longer story, but I've only got a couple of minutes to go. Please look up Grace Tame. Please look up #LetHerSpeak. If this is the future of women for Australia, then we are in solid, strong hands. Please look her up. She's changed those laws now in Tasmania. For the next 10 years and even to this day, the woman continually Googles her attacker, continually checks the Mako services updates to make sure that she's aware of where that attacker is. It is her resilience that gets her through every day, and it is her resilience that gives her the confidence and the power and the energy to continue to succeed. In 2005, the family moved to Queensland, and this was significant. She felt so much of the pain that she dealt with as a child was left behind. There is so much more to this woman's story that can reflect resilience. She has 2 sons, one from her first marriage and a stepson from her second marriage, who she has always loved and treated as her own. He is an addict, and that is another whole heartbreaking story. Why does this woman continue to strive for success? Why does she continually try and challenge herself? And why is nothing too hard or a problem too big? Why? Because she is resilient. And that woman is me. So everyone, thank you so much for allowing me to share my story of a very personal story of resilience. Continue to draw on your inner strength, continue to be confident, continue to challenge yourself and take risks. And most importantly, continue to be the best woman that you can be. Thanks so much and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
I'll also big thanks to Donnie, who, as I said, is logged in and watching. And also, I believe this morning Ben was out on a fishing charter of sorts. So I'm also impressed with the fact that once upon a story Ben had hair and a mane. So that's Donnie's story, guys. And for me, I was with Janelle when she started writing that journey. So last week kind of broke my heart seeing it the first time, that no woman, female or even male should ever go through that at the hands of a perpetrator. So heartbreaking stories coming from everybody today. So guys, we're actually going to skip quite through a 5-minute break, and I'm going to ask Alex Jack from Hospital John B and Renee Blackman from Suncorp. Renee's going to take a long way around. Alex is wanting his photo taken over on the photo wall, apparently. Guys,
I gave you a badge.
Renee's microphone's on, so what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, yes, I'm fine.
Okay.
Got on my pants.
Okay, guys, so for all intent and purposes, the two amazing people that joined me on stage today, and actually one amazing Renee, then there's Alex. But Alex, I just want to say a big appreciation from us. Alex flew in just for this event today, so he's coming from Sydney, being our token male for the day, because Peter's not here, and sometimes Peter's not the token male. He's watching and it's okay. But Alex has obviously wanted to be here as the only keynote male speaker to be able to talk to everybody today. And he's taken the extreme steps of flying in from Sydney, and he's going to fly straight back out at the end of all of this. So from the bottom of the FBAA's hearts, thank you. And I'm now going to hand over to yourself and Renee for choosing to include.
Thank you.
Hey,
Hey, welcome.
I've heard I've got to really suck on this thing for you to hear me down the back. Can you hear me? Awesome.
Awesome. So firstly, we just want to say thank you because we know that we're running slightly over time. But we really think that this session is important, and we invite you to please stay with us and take part in what we're going to do this afternoon. So thank you in advance for, however, in saying that, now that I've said that, please, if you do have to leave, we're not going to boo you as you walk out. So if you do have to leave, that's okay. We're inclusive here, we're inclusive.
Rise, rise, down.
Yeah. Now, Alex and I, when we were invited to be part of today, we had quite a few conversations about what we thought we'd like to talk about. And as you've heard from all the guest speakers today, there's been a variety of topics, and something that Jules said in hers around it's time to not just have a conversation, but actually do something and take some action. And what we wanted to do was make this an interactive conversation. So we're going to invite you to be part of it. And the way we're going to do that is ask you some questions. If you don't feel like you want to contribute, that's fine. We'll just wait until that awkward silence and someone feels so uncomfortable that they actually have to say something. So look out for that. What we did want to do though was take a minute, because you've heard like International Women's Day is about celebrating the success of women and the achievements of women, and it's also about raising awareness around gender equality. We did want to spend a minute just to give you a picture of the state of the world and why this conversation is important. So here's some facts. Women lead only 10 of 195 countries and represent just 25% of parliaments worldwide. Only 1% of C-suite leaders are Black women. 59% of Black women globally say they have never had an informal interaction with a senior leader at their company. That means like a conversation, having a coffee. Only 8% of Fortune 500 companies are run by women, and women hold just 17% of board seats worldwide. Women are paid 23% less globally. Because of COVID-19, women are shouldering a heavier burden of household labour and caregiving, and experiencing physical symptoms of stress and burnout at up to 2 times the rate of men. I felt like saying 10, but it's 2. As a result, 1 in 4 women are considering downgrading the work that they're doing or leaving the workforce altogether. Globally, women's job loss rate due to COVID-19 is 80% higher than men. And at this rate, it will take us 100 years to get to gender equality. So this is why the conversation is important. And while some of those statistics might not specifically apply to Australia, it applies to a community that we belong to, and that's the global community. Now, we've got a couple of things that we wanted to pose to you, which are just some research that's been done about the environment that we're actually in, and then the conversation that we want to have. So if I could ask for a question, I need to poll you for this question. So how many times more often do men interrupt women than other men? So the options are almost 1 time more, almost 5 times more, or almost 3 times more often. What do you think the statistic is?
5? It's 3. So almost 3 times more often, men interrupt women rather than other men.
It just feels like 5.
Surprised you didn't interrupt them. When parents work from home, how many times more likely are mothers to be interrupted by their children compared to fathers?
10.
It's actually only 1.5, but I know it feels like a lot. I get it, totally.
I don't know where you got that.
I know it's wrong, it's totally wrong. And this is the last one. According to Harvard University's implicit association test, what percentage of people more readily associate men with career, so men with career, and women with family? And the results are 76%, and that includes women. And so to Jules's point about it's an inclusive problem. It's not, Alex, you are not the problem.
Best news I've heard all day. Jules is my new favourite human because it turns out it's not my fault. So it's, your fault, but but I wasn't going to say that, but I've said it. So anyway, thanks, Jules.
And the last one, which talks to what Jules was saying about maths in terms of the perception and the language that goes on in the difference. So in a study of performance reviews, what percentage of women receive negative feedback on their personal style, such as you can sometimes be abrasive? And what percentage of men do you think received the same type of feedback? So 66% of women receive that type of feedback. 1% of men receive that type of feedback.
So we were looking at that, Renee. We were looking at this last week, and just hearing Jules sort of talking through just being human and being kind and trying to support each other as opposed to, and thinking in the positive as opposed to the negative. And that really scared me because when I heard Jules speaking and we were down the back talking, it's like, wow, that statistic really does nail that, because as guys, it's 1%, like it's non-existent. It's not a thing that we think about. It's not a thing we talk about. But how do we make change? What do we do differently? What do we walk away with today and just say, we're not doing that anymore? And it's easier said than done. You've got to start somewhere.
It is easier said than done. So the first thing we wanted to do was just pose a little bit of a challenge to you, because having Alex as part of the speaker lineup, yes, he did speak last year, I believe.
Yep.
However, as you've seen from the calibre of speakers today, we've represented diversity. And what we wanted to pose to you was, how are you feeling, in all honesty, how are you feeling right now about having a gender diverse panel talking to you on International Women's Day?
That was really good. I thought she was going to say a bloke on the stage.
One of the tips is not to label. Yeah.
Equality.
Yeah.
Like, it's about being equal. So
yes,
it would be too far of a pendulum swing
yeah.
to be like all women ranting or something about the problems. Like, working together is the solution.
Yes. Yeah. Does anyone else have a different view?
I like on International Women's Day, I do like to hear from women.
Yes.
Like what they've done is inspirational. Like, I actually prefer that than hearing from a male.
Yes.
Maybe it's not the male necessarily.
Yeah.
Expected of what is achieved.
Mm.
I have gone to a lot of events and these where there's been all male speakers, and I've sat there and I've gone, what is this one anyway?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's so many women that have achieved. So I actually personally, on International Women's Day, like to hear
Yes.
an inspirational story from that.
Yeah.
But Alex inspires me. He's not telling
yeah.
the story because it's a day where you do something about.
Yep. Yeah.
I have another to add to that. I think that women's voices are not, from the statistics that you mentioned there, that women's voices need to have an outlet, and if the one day that we get that International Women's Day, I think that's lovely. I do think that where men can really help with that, it's in the jumping in the pool.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, because it's in the, we can't run this world together,
Mm-hmm.
like, or, you know, separately. And so hearing how men are hearing the stories that you have about how you're talking to other men about women might be a really great way, something to bring to the conversation as well, to say, you know what, exactly what, I can't remember, sorry, was it Cassandra? Jodie? Yeah, who was talking about what her son had been through, what her son had been through, about what he'd heard about another girl, and then how to actually counteract that. So I don't think that all of the answers come from us.
Yes.
Because, you know, when we are not the ones in the powerful positions at the moment. And so it does need to come from men as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my perspective.
Thank you. And I'm really enjoying the contribution. Thank you very much. Getting a bit excited and just trying to stand still. I really take your point around the speakers and our industry. It's a very interesting space to try and make sure that there is a good mix of speakers. And what I know from working with aggregators is they find it really difficult to, unfortunately, find good female talent, and they are definitely trying though, and that's some feedback that I would take on your behalf back to the industry bodies, because to me it shouldn't be about one day. One day is terrific, and it's interesting because in researching for today, because we wanted to give a bit of a story around why it is and what's the current landscape, you were surprised at how long this day has been on, weren't you?
Yeah, does anyone know how long OWD has been going for?
1911.
1911.
Yeah.
I talk about slow moving ships.
It was an overnight success.
Yeah. 1911. Yeah, I was gobsmacked. Like, I never knew that.
But if you look at what it is today, and if I would encourage you to have a look at the International Women's Day official website, there are some phenomenal tools, videos, the range of education and conversation tools that has been developed to support the conversation is absolutely outstanding. So yes, it has started a long time ago, but for where we are now in being able to actually talk about it and even just have this conversation right here, I think we have made progress. I do want to ask you, Alex, just around your point to the stories from men. We spend a little bit of time in forums around attracting what is it our industry needs to attract more women, because we have a challenge in our industry where we're actually going against the trend of others, and we're not seeing an increase in females joining the industry, which is a significant challenge for us. And often you are the only male in that room. And I just wanted to ask you to spend a little bit of time talking about what's been your experience, how have you felt, and what have other people done to make you feel more included, and what would you like to see in that environment?
That's a really tough question, thanks. I'm going to pick up Jules a little bit more because she said she was the most vulnerable before in the room. Suck it, I think I take the cake now. Okay, so I suppose for me, it's something I've always been passionate about. Something, to be honest, very early in my career came from a really bad place. And that was, there was a women's network which really was designed to try and help women further their careers in a very male-dominated world. And I figured, well, if I go and listen to what they've got to say, I'm going to get there quicker. Right? That was very young, very immature, very naive. But then I quickly learned as I started to get into leadership roles that how much diversity and inclusion really matters, and how I can get the best out of people. And, you know, talk about just treating people as humans. I didn't see gender, I just saw people, and I saw strengths and weaknesses. I started to realise my own weaknesses, and I've got a fair few. And the best advice I ever got was, when you're recruiting for people, get people who complete you, right? Who complement your weaknesses. And that's how you form a good team. So that's what I focused on. And quickly, I just saw the world very differently. However, not being naive, there's still a huge problem. And Renee was talking about some of the stuff we've done together, and I've got to say I do it because I feel I want to make a difference. So I need to be part of it. But it's gotten to the point now where I feel obligated to go. I feel obligated to go. I talked to blokes and I've thanked a few for coming here today, because if I don't, who's going to come? And I've had days where, and we've talked about this, where I literally, I've had family commitments or work commitments. Like, shit, I don't think I can make it, but if I don't, who's going to be there? And it's not that I think I'm any sort of, subject matter expert, and I talk about this quite openly, and it's real, because I don't have a psychology degree, I don't, but I feel I've got a lot of life experience, and unlike a lot of people that I see, actions speak louder than words. I'm doing my bit. I've got 3 daughters, 1 son. The story around, having a boy, my boy's 14. I talk quite openly. Anyone who knows me, I'm a 10 out of 10 extrovert. I talk about anything and everything. But open communication is a big thing. And I would normally, in fact, this time last year, I was presenting by myself, and I started it with apologising. That's how I started my presentation. For those who were there, I apologised. I told everyone that I was feeling very vulnerable, and everything I was about to say came from a good place, and apologies if I said one word wrong. And that was my biggest fear. My biggest fear I was meant to stream today. I was going to live stream and do my presentation. And then I thought, holy crap, 1, I'm the only guy presenting. 2, if it looks like I couldn't even be bothered making an effort to come here. And I'm starting to realise I'm overthinking this, but it's only because I'm thinking, what are the haters going to say? Right? So I'm just doing my bit, and that's when I engage Renee. And I've got a lot of respect for Renee, but I thought we were initially doing separate presentations, and I approached him and said, how about we do something together and sort of talk about the elephant in the room, talk about how do we address change, and where does it come from, and what can we do to make a difference? And that's what we're here to talk about. We've looked at data, we've done some research, we've picked up on things. Yes, it's choose to challenge, but Renee said, you know what? We need to choose to include. And that's very much what we wanted to talk about.
Yes. So we've got some initial sort of thoughts around what does it mean if you want to include the people around you? What does it mean for your workplace? What does it mean for your family? And what are some simple things that you can do? And you actually heard a lot of it through the different speakers that came through today. And so what we want to do is just explore a couple of things and have a discussion around it if you would like to. But we've got basically just a few things. So the first one is don't assume. So we have unconscious biases. I don't know if any of you have ever explored that, but how we are built as human beings, we actually have unconscious biases that are inbuilt within us, and part of the tools that is on the International Women's Day website, it breaks down the different unconscious biases, and part of that is around not assuming anything about the person that's in front of you. Always communicate. So you heard, I think, from each of our speakers today around communication. Take the time to listen. Empathy is key. Avoid categorizing. So you've heard a lot of different labels today, and I think part of the challenge is, like I hear, a lot of people don't actually know what to say, and so they then don't say anything, and they don't ask a question because they don't want to say the wrong thing, and they don't know how to make the environment safe. So we're hoping that this is a safe environment to have a conversation. Be an enabler. That means supporting the people that are around you. It means encouraging them. It means allowing them to be vulnerable. Be supportive. And treat everyone equally. Now, I know that they are things you haven't heard, you've probably heard those terms before, but we would challenge you to go away from here and really think about what it means to be inclusive when you go back to your workplace or your office or your home. And as Jules was saying, I think towards the end, it may not happen really quickly. So please be kind and have compassion for yourself around sometimes, and I definitely do this with teenage children, sometimes a bit judgmental, and have my own story about what I think is going on, and it's never what's going on, unfortunately for me, until I work that out a few days later.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, and I love the concept of jumping in the pool, and it's about letting, one, I had to stop and learn to listen. That involves me not talking. So I'm practicing that on the stage right now. Like it's really, the stat around men just talking over and jumping in and interrupting. I swear I do that a lot, but it's only because I get excited, right? And it's not that I have, but I do it to guys, I do it to girls. I'm not thinking about it that way, but how do we change the way we see things? And I think there's an opportunity, and I know I would encourage you all to ask questions and really challenge the status quo. So for the women in my life, and Leah's copped a lot of confronting questions, so has Renee, because I know I can ask them and not be judged. And I do. I ask pretty bold questions that I can't repeat here at the fear of being judged. But I want to learn and I want to be better. And that's what I certainly offer. And Renee said, well, how about we have a bit of fun? And I put you on the spot a little bit. And I said, well, I trust you implicitly. So go for it. So I didn't even know what she was going to ask, but I know being the only guy in the room is uncomfortable, and I sort of like it a little bit. Not going to lie. But at the same time, I feel there's not enough here. And for the guys in the room, I would encourage you to encourage more guys to come along. If nothing else, they will learn. And if nothing more than that, they'll learn to listen. So I think that's a big part, and learn how we can play a role. Again, my thing is I've now got an even stronger motivation, and I've got 3 girls and 1 boy. I teach him about what it means to be a man growing up in this world. Do I know? Well, I'm going off what I think strong values, principles, morals, respect, common sense logic. So it's okay for him to wash dishes. In fact, he has to, because I do, right? It's not a thing. Your unconscious bias is formed in your formative years, and it's generally as you're an infant. Once that's done, it's sort of set in stone. So I've got my unconscious bias. Why? Because my mother is quite a stereotypical European lady who loves to cook, loves to clean. That's what she does.
My European.
But here I am now forcing a change in my son to make sure he knows it's okay. In fact, more than okay to be in the kitchen, because that's what I'm doing. I'm a shit cook. I can't cook for anything, but I can peel potatoes, right? And I used this example last year. So I teach him that. But at the same time, it's okay for my girls to have to put the rubbish out. Why? Because I'm just trying to make sure it's all things are equal. We all just take turns and we rotate it around. That's my little bit. I've been mentoring for years, and I shared this. In fact, Leah knows it as well. Mentoring for years. My mentees have only been female. Right? Because that's my little way of making a change. And it's not that every female needs a male mentor. That's not the case at all. In fact, whenever I've got mentees approaching me, I often want to sit down and work out what it is they need help with, because it may well be that they need someone else. If I can't help them, there's no point starting that journey. So it's just going back to what I was saying, looking at your weakness and drawing upon that. And, Renee's my strength today, so.
I want to call on one point, which is Alex made, which is around questions. And he does ask really good questions. I think one of the challenges I've experienced myself, for myself, but in others around me, is that often when someone is saying something in an environment, making a judgment about someone or saying something which makes the environment uncomfortable, we choose, and I've definitely chosen, to be polite rather than to call it out. And the bit of advice that I would like to leave you with today that's worked for me is to respond by asking a probing question, because that way you can actually start to understand where that thought is coming from. And also it helps the other person start to have to think through, why is it that they've made that judgment or had that comment? And it's, why do you say that? Where do you see that playing out? What are the examples of that? And that just gives you a moment to have a very different conversation rather than perhaps being polite and holding a space because you don't want to disturb and it may not be uncomfortable. That could be an easy way to transition into changing the conversation just in a moment.
There's one thing I want to add, which we talked about briefly as well, which is there's a perfect storm at the moment, right? There was all these naysayers pre-COVID that used to think flexibility was a thing we talked about and it would never really work. And could you really work from home? Well, the whole world has done it and it sort of worked. Nothing really broke. It wasn't the best, but we sort of made it work. But the reality is that it can work. And so this perfect storm that I'm talking about, which I think happens once in a millennium, hopefully, because we don't want to see another pandemic for a bloody long time, is that curve has now changed. And the opportunity, which I think if you look at all the research and data suggests the reason why there's very few women in sort of executive C-level spots is because traditionally the workplace has not allowed the flexibility for women who've gone on to have families, which is perfectly okay, but it's never really backed it up with a flexible work environment to continue your career. Now, there's a huge opportunity because we've all become accustomed to doing things differently. And it's okay. At the beginning of COVID, you know, you're on a Zoom, God forbid anyone should walk behind you. Now, my daughter just comes in, she does the standard hello to, could be people from work, could be external people. She does not care, and I don't anymore either, right? Whereas that first is like, oh, geez, Paige, get out of here, right? But now it's like, come on, Paige, come and say it, because it's better she just gets it out of her system and goes away. And no one else cares either. It's sort of like standards. So we've sort of come this far. It'd be a shame to just creep back into autopilot and not embrace this unique moment we have globally to say, well, actually, it's not okay to have these hybrid working environments because it does work. And so back to Jules's point, it's like now is the time we take action. Now's the time that we say it's not okay to say I can't have flexibility while I'm on mat leave and choose to work 3 hours a day. It actually can work. So that's, yeah, huge opportunity. That was it for me.
100% agree, and that's the end.
Done.
Now is the time. Done.
Thank you.
I'm going to say, if you have any questions, please feel free to grab Renee or Alex, and thank you to those of you that have made it here. I'm going to ask Joanna to hobble over to the wall to pick a picture for us. For those of you that are left in the room as well, I have a challenge based on what Renee and Alex have also said. And it's something that has probably been close to my heart for the last 24 years of working in finance. And the challenge lays with you guys. Are we not applying for senior executive positions in companies because we're too scared to, or because we keep hiding behind the fact that we believe that men stop us from doing it? So it's up to us to make the change. And the biggest change that I still believe in is that we're stopping ourselves from going for those positions. So make sure you do step up and apply for the job. And if you don't get it, do you know what? You're going to learn from it. So every day, every experience you have, learn something from it. Thank you to all of our sponsors for joining us today. Guys are still at the back with plenty of free shit. You've been in COVID. You're all probably missing free shit. Get the free shit. They don't want to take it home with you. For those of you that are watching from home, thank you very much for joining us today. We know we've gone over time. Guys, there is still some food up the back. Grazing tables. We're over the sanitizer use topic. Use your hands. Have a free for all. There's cocktails up the back. And for everybody at home, check out the FBAA website. We've got more events coming to you. We're headed down to Melbourne and into New South Wales. Make sure you get registered for those, and we'll see you all soon.